Now, seed dibbers, they're pretty useful things, especially for measuring out your coffee. So don't think they just have one use. Right, have I learned a cup of coffee? Now I'd say it's been a pretty harsh winter really. For sure, it's been one of the wettest that I can remember. But that's okay. Every season throws something at us that gives us a bit of a challenge. And hopefully we rise to it. But a few days of nice weather in the forecast make all the difference. They give you a bit of get up and go. So there's quite a few jobs to be done over the next couple of days. I'm really hoping that the pond will drain and I can get in there and get the rocks on the background organised and get the liner in. So fingers crossed for that. But one of the things that has really been prevalent in the last few days is the growth of buds on the trees. The pear tree, the apple trees, and also on the black currants, but most of all on the jostaberries. And that's leading me to think it's time to prune. I don't really want to be pruning when the leaves have broken out of the buds. So there's quite a bit of pruning to do, and I'll take you along and show you what I'm doing. And I'll show you the jostaberries first, because they really are amazing. So I looked at these yesterday and I really was staggered how much growth there is on them. And with jostaberries, the main thing is that they're quite vigorous bushes. These were big bushes when I put them in, but now they're really getting going. So I want to make sure that I keep a line just on this edge. I'm not so worried if they grow that way, but I do want to control them from growing over into this direction. So apart from pruning where I've got some really obvious crossing branches, like this one here, which is going to end up just rubbing. In fact, you can see on the branch below where it's rubbed backwards and forwards. So that's going to come out. But other than that, it's going to be these that stretch over into the right hand side. And just looking at crossing over branches, there's another classic one there which is starting to wear inside on that branch because it's rubbing against it. So that's what I'm looking for. And like all berry bushes, just trying to get an open bush so that plenty of air gets in amongst it. Now with the black currants, I pruned them really hard last year, and that's resulted in lots of great upward growth. And now I can afford to take a few of these far-reaching branches that stretch out and are leaning over. I can afford to take some of those away. Now this is the area that we're going to have the chickens in, hopefully in the not too distant future. So we'll see how we go. And this is a classic case. So we can see all this strong upward growth following last year's pruning, but this branch is really becoming troublesome. So I'm going to take it off, and it might look quite gruesome, but it'll do the plant no end of good, and it'll make these two strong upward growths come even stronger. And this one's probably just as bad, so we're going to take him as well. And this plant is starting to get some shape over here, and we'll leave this for now and we'll see if we can achieve the same in due course on this side. Well, it's been a long journey pruning these black currants over the past 2 or 3 years, but we're starting to get bushes that are about the right shape, and all this upward growth that you can see will start to form really strong bushes in subsequent seasons. But we'll get some crop off of that, and hopefully we'll start to get some shapely bushes that are productive. I'm going to try and avoid having bonfires this year. I don't have many. I think I only had one last year, but I'm going to find a way, if I can, of using these clippings somehow on the plot, and I've cut them all down just to keep the volume down, but I think it'll help the environment and it'll certainly avoid upsetting any neighbours. Last year I had a bit of a problem with this bench. It's a great bench, but I filled it with seedlings and I got to a point of no return where I couldn't really take the seedlings off of it and bring over here because I had the tomatoes here. So you might be thinking, well, why would I want to move it? Well, what I found was in the summer months I put my seedlings into trays like this one, and that way I can pool a bit of water on the bottom. Just make sure they don't dry out too quickly. And what I found was, because it's not level, all the water would run to the ends of the trays, which resulted in me having some seedlings that were waterlogged and some that were a bit dry. So I've got my trusty level. I'm going to strip this bench down, take it off, adjust the legs and see if I can get it nice and level. And that'll make sure that this year that small process will play into having my seedlings well watered and not suffering in any way. That's the plan. That's the first time my seeds have ever been on the level. So that didn't take me too long, but I think it's going to be well worth the effort. And what this does do is show you the extent of the gradient on my plot. If we go outside and just look at the shelf along the polytunnel, you get an idea of how the plot slopes away, even at this end, which is far less of a gradient than that end. But hey, I'm not swapping this plot. Well, the other day when I was putting my seeds into the trays, I did put some sweet peas that I'd saved, and it occurred to me I had so many left over. I need to make good use of these, so I'm going to make 6 pots and just put the balance of these into the pots. They make great gifts, and well, people will be pleased to receive them, I'm sure. So these were fantastic. When I opened them, the seeds have started to chit, which is a process sometimes with sweet peas that you try to achieve, and very often you can leave them in a glass of water for 24 hours and it just softens that outer casing of the seed and enables them to get that root out a little bit easier. So these are, well, 50% of them have got those little roots on already because they've been in the shade, which is a little bit on the damp side. So I'm going to sow those, and then hopefully we'll have a fabulous showing of sweet peas this year. Six pots sweet peas, all marked with the word saved because they're my saved seed, and we'll pop those down at ground level and just see how they get along. But that makes good use of all those extra sweet peas that I saved from last year. Good times. Well, I think this is going to take quite a bit of effort. I've got 3 of these little batteries and I'm just going to see if it's going to go through this. But it's a lot better than doing it by hand. These posts are pretty meaty. Let's have a go. Well, it looks like we're blessed with some fine weather for the next 4 days. So I was thinking yesterday I'm going to run out of space on my bench inside the polytunnel fairly quickly now. So I need to get the cold frame back into use. So I'm going to open it up for the first time, have a look how it's wintered. If you remember, I put sand down last year on the bottom of the cold frame, and that worked really well, keeping the slugs and pests away. So I've got that little bit of extra sand from making the patio. I think I'm going to put it in there, and even if I want to use it at a later date, I can hook it out, but it can make a good base in the bottom of the polytunnel. Let's have a look what it looks like after the winter. So I had to do one minor repair during the winter because this stretcher came off, but it seems to have stayed on okay. Okay, so there we have it. We've got a bit of algae growing on the top of the sand, or moss actually, and we've got a couple of unwanted weeds which we'll remove, but it just goes to show how that sand on the membrane seems to have worked quite well. And I think if I top it up now, that'll be just perfect. Well, we're getting to the time now where I want to spread a lot of this compost along. So we're probably going to cook up a really big stew and we can freeze it. But we're going to just test a few of these veg, make sure they haven't got too tough. What's interesting is the original leaves have died right back, literally rotted and on the surface of the compost. And what we can see now with this growth is new growth coming from the parsnips. And of course that's taking goodness out of the root, and therefore they're not much longer for staying in the ground. So we'll get a couple out and see what they're like once they're cooked. And if it's good news, it's a big batch of stew. Right, let's see. So you can see there that new growth on top is starting to get quite vigorous, but the root's still very strong and really nice and plump. So I'm thinking that they'll be really good, but we'll cook a couple first and we'll go from there. Exactly the same goes for the swede, which have got quite a lot of worm damage in them now, but I think they'll be okay. Once again, we'll cook one up and make sure everything's okay, and then we'll go for a big batch. Then we can get these few out of here and start spreading the compost nice and evenly. And exactly the same with these celeriac. These are fairly small because I definitely grew them too close together, but there's still quite a lot of root on there and they look pretty good. So we'll take a few of those out and we'll do the same test cooking, and then we'll go from there. Well, one of my beds, the wooden stretcher at the back is rotten and fallen away, and the only bit of wood that I've got that's of the same type is this one in here. And I'm going to alter this area because this is where the chickens are going to go, and I'm thinking that I might just lower some of this and get a bigger area for the potatoes in good time. Probably not this season, we'll see. So this bit of wood here retaining this soil is not really precious. I'm going to see if I can get it out and whether I can transfer it over to that bed. It looks like I staked it in pretty well. Oh no, not too bad. So let's see if that will fit. So this is the bed where the back of it has fallen away, and it really is very rotten. But hopefully that extra piece of wood will go in its place. Let's see. Yeah, that's going to be the perfect size. I just need to get this bit of soil up and then I can put it in place. So this is a bit of a mess on this corner. It's a high traffic area and I just need to make sure that it's stable and usable. So we've got quite a bit of a dip in the ground here, and what's been happening is these paving stones have been slipping off and really being quite unsafe during the winter months. So I removed them and put these longer ones in just to get us through the worst of the weather. And now it's time to do something a bit more permanent. So I saved some turf from digging out that new bed, and the idea is I'm going to turf right up to the path here and across. So I just need to get the level. I'll get these pavers up. In fact, this one's well and truly broken and is going to go in that soak away that I've made by the chicken coop. And then I'm going to try and get that turf on top and see if I can get this growing before we get into the spring months. So wish me luck. That's not too bad. It looks a bit rough now, but all of those blocks of soil had the roots of grass in them, so they'll come back real quick. And now we've got a nice even path that we can walk onto, and it'll enable me to mow that much easier. I think I probably need just a small amount of soil in there just to take out that last bit of a dip in the grass. But that'll come good as it warms up and we get some warmer weather. It's the ideal time to do it when the soil is still very flexible and I can just shape it the way I have. Now Mrs. K is itching to get out here and get her flower bed sorted, but I've just noticed got the first daffodil. He's looking a bit ragged because he's been in the wind and got blown down, but it's great to see daffodils, and that's a sure sign that spring is just around the corner. I'm pleased to say over the last couple of nights that the temperature didn't dip below 0, so everything's fine in the polytunnel, but they are forecasting a frost tonight, so I sure will be covering things up tonight. And just on the temperature side in here today, we can see that it's currently 26, so quite warm, and most of the covers got a bit of condensation on them, but that's all good. I brought out the last of my onions this morning, and this was the original Elsa Craig that I sowed back in December, and they were the ones that I hooked out of that really troublesome compost, and popping them into fresh compost seemed to have done the trick. I should have done that earlier with the rest, but no worries, there's plenty of onions coming through now from my second sowing, and these Bedfordshire Champions are looking really good as well. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.